This is Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast episode number 118. In this episode, we talk about how healthcare is ready for a leadership reset so leaders can thrive. Don't miss it. Welcome back to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. This is the only podcast that shows you how to leverage polarity intelligence, an essential competency for healthcare leaders, and the missing logic in healthcare, so you can create healthy, healing organizations and become a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable healthcare leader.
We are your hosts, Tracy Christofferson and Michelle Trosett. We've been best friends and colleagues for over 30 years. And during that time, we coached healthcare leaders across North America around how to create healthy, healing organizations.
Today, we coach healthcare leaders and leadership teams to live thriving, resilient, and balanced lives, combat burnout, and create the best places to give and receive care.
This podcast is for the unsung hero of healthcare, the healthcare leader. We want you to know we see you and we'll be here for you each week. In this podcast, we're going to challenge healthcare's industry norms, flip limiting beliefs, and share proven strategies so you can be your best self at work and at home, live and lead intentionally, and experience well-being and joy.
We are glad you are here and look forward to sharing the journey with you. If you aren't totally convinced this podcast is for you, just listen to a few episodes and convince yourself. Hello, it is Michelle.
And Tracy, welcome to Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast.
Yes.
Another awesome episode.
Another awesome episode. And today's a big one because we are challenging everyone.
Ooh, we're throwing down the challenge.
We are.
Yeah. It's going to be a really good episode. You get the two of us. We don't have any guests today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's time for some change, don't you think, Michelle?
It is. It's time to redefine our leadership norms in healthcare, in case you haven't noticed.
Things are a little messed up out there.
Yeah. And you know why we need to do this? We need to do it not only for the leaders today, we need to do it for the next generation of leaders. We owe it to them.
Yes, we do.
So we've been out there, we've been watching you, we've been talking to leaders all across the country, and it's time to redefine leadership norms.
Yeah, it is. We've been around, 30 years or more? Right?
Yes.
We grew up little baby leaders. And, I think one of the norms, right, has just been sacrifice. Leaders sacrifice.
Yes, they do.
Michelle?
Mm-hmm.
They sacrifice and, they put everybody else first. They put themselves last. And what that's done is it's put us all at risk.
Mm-hmm.
It really has. It's been exacerbated.
Yeah.
With the whole pandemic. So, we're ready to rally. We need a new leadership norm.
We do.
Yeah.
So we're kind of taking our lessons from the past, looking at what's happening today, and we're ready to take it on. And we hope you'll join us. So through the years and working with leaders, one of our favorite authors is Max Dupree, and he wrote the book, Leadership is an Art. And he had a great quote that our first responsibility of a leader is to know reality. So we're going to bring some of those realities forward when it comes to how we act as leaders, how we are as leaders, and kind of, again, challenge that norm. Mm-hmm. And we're going to expose the model that we grew up with from baby leaders on up. And the reality is the leadership that we grew up in was really unipolar. It was unipolar in the approach. And that is where we really ended up being indoctrinated into, you need to sacrifice to be a leader. You need to do whatever it takes. And that's just the way we got things done.
Well, it was role modeled for us.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Put yourself last, be a servant leader. Everybody comes before you. It's not like, we had a class on this. It wasn't like 101 leadership norm. Okay. It's the subconscious role modeling of this, the unconscious expectations. Mm-hmm. That we were kind of indoctrinated into, and people have just believed and carried on. So it's, we're not saying everybody was told as a leader, this is what you got to do. It's just been the norm of how you act as a leader, right? And it was unipolar, and it was put yourself last. And what we're realizing is this leadership is not unipolar. We really need a both and lens. We need mentoring around a both and lens. So it is, yes, serve others and serve yourself. Yes, have an individual accountability and responsibility, and have a team that also is accountable. And, give and receive. It is all of these collectively. It is the both and that's what we're striving to do, right? Create a new norm that is about both and, so that we're not going to have burnout healthcare leaders.
That's exactly right. And there's just a different way that we can think about growing in our leadership roles, instead of always kind of coming from that thinking and that mindset that the leader needs to take it all on, carry everything on our shoulders. And we know that comes with a cost. And
yes,
leaders pay a high price. And that is really why that we're putting the call out there to redefine leadership norms so that we can create a new reality. So we know the current reality, but we can create a new reality. And as we mentioned, this norm of putting yourself last, has been around for decades. And now it's just pretty obvious the impact it's had on healthcare leaders today.
Mm-hmm.
And that carrying this expectation now through a pandemic is really taking its toll.
Yeah, the pandemic has really exacerbated it, right? Leaders are exhausted. They're like, they're falling down, right? And they're there to hold others up. So, if you can't take care of yourself, right, and while you're taking care of others, then the whole system is at risk of collapse. People are burnt out, they're exhausted, they're conflicted. They're really the unsung heroes of this pandemic. And, we really just are so passionate about providing tools and resources and ways to develop this new norm that is about the both and.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
We are.
Yeah. They're feeling super accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so, right? Clinicians are really, we have a dual pandemic going on with the burnout of the clinicians. So leaders are feeling super accountable. They're really taking it on in a multitude of ways and in an exacerbated way.
Right. Because that's their accountability. Yeah. So the challenge is that they're having to deal with massive burnout right now because of what's been going on in the pandemic. And we guarantee you, there's not a healthcare leader that you talk to today when you ask them, what are your real issues now? Massive burnout is something that they're really also trying to, deal with right now. And it's massive burnout of the front line, but also their direct reports and holding their team up and themselves now, right? It's kind of the flames gone all the way up.
Well, they can't even keep their head above water. They're drowning,
can't.
Right? The first thing they say is, I'm so exhausted. I can't keep my head above water. I'm worried about everybody else,
And then the other truth of this is that, the leaders are the role models. So actually, they start role modeling burnout. They start role modeling, this is how you survive, basically survive, right? And so we really do need this new norm that we're talking about. And so we just want to ask a question. How do these unsung heroes that have been leading the way through the pandemic, how do they be a part of creating a new norm in leadership today?
Yeah. And I think it's important, and we have said this from the very beginning of the pandemic, this is an opportunity, right? If the pandemic's taught us anything, it's a great opportunity for reset, to relook and reevaluate at, what we've been doing, what's worked, what hasn't worked. We're not going back to the norm that we had. So we have to create a new normal, right, for ourselves and for the leaders. And so this is a great opportunity. There's no silver bullet. There's not going to be a quick fix. We're not saying that. What we're saying is it is really about a mindset shift, and it's about thinking in a more both and way and leading from that, role modeling that. It takes a systems thinking approach. In our 30 years of leadership, we have learned that, there are a combination of strategies that when you pull them together really help to create and help leaders live this kind of both and experience and methodology. And, it really gives them a chance to create that new norm by revealing the consequences, right, of having a unipolar approach.
Can't keep doing it the way we've been doing it.
No. And we want to move from these, leaders are conflicted. They feel that tension between, right, giving and receiving and self and others, right, and leading in that way. They're feeling conflicted because, they feel guilty when they take a vacation. I mean, they're not even taking their vacations because they feel so much guilt around taking any time for themselves. And they don't have anything in their cup to pour from.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do with this framework, the dynamic balance effect framework, is fill that cup, give them the opportunity to lead in this way.
Yeah. I was talking to a chief nursing officer the other day that she shared with me it'd been well over a year since she's taken 1 day of vacation. So,
wow, not even a day.
Not even a day. Not even a day. All right, we are about halfway through this episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And we want to take a moment to share that we are very excited about a new program we've released. Let's face it, you and your teams have been through some incredibly stressful times, and it's challenging to know how to support the team and still take care of yourself in the process. We help healthcare leaders become thriving, resilient, and unstoppable leaders. We've recently created a new self-study program titled Caring for Others Without Neglecting You. In this self-study, you will begin to develop polarity intelligence to leverage the tension in your life and create your own personalized strategy for balancing caring for your team and you. Go over to missinglogic.com/new-events to learn more and enroll today. Yeah, so we teach leaders how to live a more holistic approach to this balance that Tracy's talking about for both their professional life and their personal life. And we do that with a dynamic balance effect framework. And it's really the foundation for our thriving, resilient, unstoppable, or what we call our true leadership coaching program. And it really creates that way to have a new norm. And it's not a quick fix, but it's something that you really it shows you the way, and then we also help people really have it sink into their day-to-day application of how they do lead as well. And true leaders, they become the role models of mindful choices. So they shift their beliefs from this is how I've always done it, this is what I need to sacrifice as a leader. It replaces, I have to do it all, and gives them more empowering beliefs as they move forward in their leadership roles. And we help them work on that through the coaching program as well. And pretty quickly, they began to realize, I don't have to carry the same stories that I've always heard as a leader. I can actually change the story of how this is going to be moving forward, so I can have more of that balanced approach to my leadership style.
Well, and I think, some examples too, we've had leaders who are like, they feel like every time somebody makes a request of them that they have to meet that request, like that they can't say no. Mm-hmm. So one of their beliefs is that I can't say no. And so really we kind of open their awareness to, you can set some boundaries, you can make choices. And so they can flip that to say, I can say yes to the things that matter the most. And I don't have to say yes to the things that matter least at this point in time. And that's going to change over time. We try to teach them that this is dynamic, that it's not, no to everything, and it's not yes to everything, that you have to make those choices. And you have the agency to do that. I think that's really an important piece, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't have to, I'm the only one that's accountable. I'm the leader, so I'm the only one accountable.
Yeah, yeah.
I can share accountability with my team, right? And so you release that burden. And I think this is the thing that's really making the biggest difference for the leaders that we've been working with.
Mm-hmm. And to give them strategies so they're prepared for when they know they're going to want to say no. How many times do we hear, oh, I said yes again. And I really meant no.
Yeah. And how many times did we do that, right? Yeah. Like we're coming from a place of,
knowing.
And, and we've really worked together as a leadership team to say, okay, the reality is every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So one of the things that we bring to leaders as we're working with them is just, if you say, ask your pause, you can always pause and say, I really appreciate that opportunity that you're providing me. Let me get back to you, right? Or I really appreciate the request. I understand the importance of it. I want to give you a thoughtful response. And then you can step back and say to yourself, okay, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to?
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. Yeah.
Or, even just step back and say, wow, if I take this on alone, what's that going to mean? Who else can I leverage as part of my team, right? We all own the outcomes of this. So who else can I bring in to help me so that I'm not carrying that burden all alone, right? There's decisions that you make and be mindful. And I think that just is, that's one of the things that we're trying, rather than just reactionary, oh, I'm the leader, I got to take it on, or I got to say yes. No. Like, you don't have to do that. You can be mindful in those choices, right?
Yep.
The other thing that we do is in working with, with these leaders and helping them become thriving, resilient, unstoppable leaders is, of course, we teach them about polarity intelligence, right? And we're helping them to understand this both and thinking, and really leveraging that as a leader to balance caring for them, others and their teams, their families, their communities, and caring for themselves. We teach them, how to really create a plan to manage that, to manage being, an individual and having that accountability, but also team accountability. And what are the things that they can do to really take action to balance that in a better way? And also helping them with giving and receiving. Like, they give. Leaders just tend to give, right? We're servant leaders.
Until they're empty.
Until there's nothing there, right? And very rarely will they open themselves up to receive. And this is about both. It is about that. And you won't have anything to pour from that cup if you don't balance these. So understanding polarities and polarity intelligence and how to bring the both and into your leadership norm is one of the things that's a part of the framework, and that really helps them. And then the other thing too is personal alignment. And this is near and dear to our heart, right? Like, we've heard a lot in the pandemic about, people not being aligned and not feeling like, they're doing the work that they intended to do. There's certainly been a lot more stress, a lot more strain, a lot more responsibilities, challenges, right? You get away from feeling like you're fulfilling your purpose to you're just sludging through every day, just trying to keep your head above water, right?
Yeah, there's no pause. There's no time for reflection. It's, we've known leaders have always been busy, but I think what's happened since the pandemic, they've just add 50 more miles an hour to their schedules and to their, that speed of which they work.
The speed and the length.
The length,
right?
yes.
Like, it's 50 miles an hour, but it's 200 more miles that you're trying to go in a day,
with no
right?
No end in sight, right?
Yeah,
it's
no
crazy.
end in sight. It is. And so this is, a big part of the framework is this personal alignment, to step back. You can step back in a crisis. You can step back in the midst of chaos. You can reevaluate your goals. You can say, wait a minute, right? Like, my long-term goals may not be possible, but what are some short-term goals that really align with my purpose as a leader, with where I want to go, with what I want to contribute, your vision of your future, who you want to be, aligning that with not just professional, but stepping back to the holistic aspect of your life, the professional and personal, because we're so driven as leaders, especially as young leaders, right? Take it all on, do it all, because that means you're going to climb the ladder, right? And then the more you do, the more they expect you to do, the more you want to do, the more you're not saying no. These are the norms, right, folks? I mean, I bet there's a number of people listening are going, oh, yeah, been there, done that, right?
Yep. That's the vicious cycle.
Exactly. And so it is about, it's about growing and being a phenomenal leader, developing those skills, taking more on so that you can climb that ladder, so you can take on more responsibility, but doing it within the context of the whole. And what is that going to mean to the rest of my life? Because in a unipolar norm that we've had, it's all been about push, go, climb, right? For some, and neglect the personal aspects of their lives. And for some, that's had detrimental results. And we know there's going to be negative results if you're unipolar.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
And again, we were just talking to a healthcare leader last week who now can look back and kind of regrets how much time was spent on that leadership ladder because now her kids have moved out of state and she can't get back that time. And, those are some of the realities.
Well, right. And how many times have we heard people say, and I've heard this from a number of different leaders, I only have 18 summers with my kids.
Oh.
Into thinking about, I only have 18 years before they're adults and they're on their own and life is going to change. I only have so many years while they're young and they really still want to be with me, right? I only have, and to really kind of put it in that perspective of what are you sacrificing? What are you saying no to? And we're not saying don't go after it, man. Go for it. If you want to be a leader, we're not saying that. We're saying do it within this both and lens. Do it with your eye on the whole of your life and not just the professional aspects and not just sacrificing things in your personal life to get what you want in your professional life. Right. You can have both. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, you can have both.
Okay, so all we needed to do was come on here and say, you can have both a professional life and a personal life, and just go do it.
Yeah, so I have another quote from Max Dupree.
Oh yeah, he was a wise man.
Because this is kind of a good time to throw this one out here. In the end, let me start that over. In the end, it is important to remember that we cannot become what we need to be by remaining what we are. And I think that's the challenge that Tracy and I are putting out there, that this is an opportune time to look at the norms of leadership and even ask ourselves the question, what happens if we don't? That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And so here's your call to action if you are ready to join us on this quest. Our dynamic balance framework, it really forms the foundation for the thriving, resilient, unstoppable leadership coaching program that we do. And we've moved this into healthcare organizations now. And so we're really looking for leaders and organizations that they do want their leaders to start leading differently now because they know what the outcome's going to be if they don't do an intervention and change the norms and that lens of how we've always approached leadership. And so you can do that. Probably the best and easiest way to do that is just go to our website, MissingLogic.com. And if you look under the healthcare organization tab, we do have a link on there that you can sign up for a 30-minute free consultation with Tracy and I. Yeah. And I think it's been very helpful to just actually walk healthcare leader executives through what is this program all about. Yeah. And how does it align with what you want to see happening in your organization?
Well, and I would just invite too, if you're interested in rallying with us, right, to make this a reality, just reach out. We can have a 30-minute conversation. We're happy to we'd love to dialogue with other leaders about this and about the need for it and what you're experiencing and the opportunity that exists. Because if we don't take advantage of this opportunity, right? Knowing what we know about how polarities work, if we continue in a unipolar norm for leaders, we know 100% guaranteed we're going to fail. We're going to continue to experience the negative consequences. And you're not only in our personal lives, but in our professional lives as leaders. So, ultimately you end up with the negative consequences of over-focusing in one area to the neglect of the other. And you end up in the negative consequences of both. And that is what we want to avoid. And it's 100% predictable. That's why we're so passionate about this. This is why we're recognizing this norm has existed. And we just want to heighten awareness and bring awareness around it so that we can shift from the unsung hero, from, the conflicted leader to this true leader, to the thriving, resilient, unstoppable leader that's leveraging this, right? This both and lens and the polarities.
Yeah. And if we don't, more and more will burn out.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So we know that if we're successful at changing what is normal today, and that we're going to be able to see different outcomes. Number one, we're going to be able to retain great leaders that already exist. And we know for a fact leaders are also leaving healthcare right now. So this is really an important outcome we want to achieve.
It's very costly, right? To an organization, just the culture sometimes too, right? When you lose a great leader, it is detrimental, right? It not only financially is it expensive to lose them and replace them, but it costs the organization something when you lose a great leader too.
Yep, absolutely. We'll also be able to have them lead with more joy, which everyone wants that, right? And position them to be their best selves at work and at home. So that's another really positive outcome. Very important in changing this norm is we're going to create new role models to grow new leaders.
Yes.
So this is how you break the cycle or break the patterns that are out there when it comes to, how we've been indoctrinated to lead by sacrificing and doing whatever it takes, is we need new role models and how to do it differently. And they can grow new leaders. And pretty soon we'll have a new norm. It'll be great.
And then we'll have more thriving work cultures too, right?
Yes.
Because as the leaders are more joyful, we're retaining these really solid leaders. They're role modeling for others how to live this more balanced approach to leadership in life. Then that's, others pick up on that and there's more joy in the organization. There's more energy. There's more productivity, right? It impacts everything.
It does.
It really does.
And the other thing that it does is I think Tracy and I talk about how important this is it entices other people to step into leadership roles. Because right now, I think it's getting harder to recruit people to leadership roles because they're seeing what their leaders are dealing with. So another important reason we want to change the norm. Yeah.
Well, and think about that. How many people have you maybe approached in your career as a leader, asking them, saying, wow, you really got some leadership potential, and having them go, I don't want anything to do with being a leader. I watch what you do. I see what you sacrifice. I see how hard you work. I see the hours you put in. No, thank you.
Yeah.
It happens a lot more than, oh, yes, sign me up. Right? They're watching and they're seeing. And that is not what we want for the next generation of leaders, right? We want people that go, wow, look at what you're doing and look at the life that you have. And we're not saying there aren't people out there doing it. We know there are. That's why we're saying we need more. We need more of those that are already thriving, resilient, unstoppable leaders that are role modeling this. So we know it can happen. So just imagine being a part of that, imagine just being a part of a movement, creating those kinds of environments, creating those kinds of leaders, and the difference that can make, not only for you, for your organization, for the profession you might be in, but for the country, really, right? And for our healthcare system at large,
Excuse me, just have one more thing to say, and going through it together.
Yeah.
I mean,
collectively.
I mean, you said that, but the power of going through it together as a team, it's amazing.
Yeah. So I think, there's so much to share, right? And there's so much to learn from each other and to lean into each other, because this isn't, like we said, there's no silver bullet. It's not an easy journey. It's a necessary journey.
Exactly.
And it'll change everything. So we're excited to lead the charge on that, to throw down the challenge, to change this norm. We're really glad that you joined us today. You've been listening to this another episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast. And we're just so grateful for our listeners, for this opportunity to just share our perspectives. That's all we're here to do. And really to help healthcare organizations and leaders on this journey and through this really challenging time. So, we'll see you next time. Stay safe and stay healthy. And thanks for being here.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Healthcare's Missing Logic podcast, now a top-rated podcast for healthcare leaders. Please share this podcast with other healthcare leaders and anyone else you think would benefit. We are certain that if you found value in it, they will too. If you haven't already done so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any episodes. And also, it would mean the world to us if you took a quick moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast player. It helps to get the word out about our podcast and incredible guests. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to watch our podcasts. You can also follow us on our MissingLogic social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time.